Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Start is Near podcast. And per Mike's invitation, I'm going to go ahead and give the spiel. So, everyone, put
Thank
your
you, my friend. Thank you.
your
Yeah.
list your listening caps on. Okay, so the topic here is collective human superintelligence, which forms the acronym CHSI, which we lovingly pronounce CHISI. And again, collective human superintelligence. And there's a lot of facets to that. And it's a very emergent phenomenon. So it's not fully formed yet. It doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't quite yet exist. But the necessary ingredients exist. So first, let me start with the vision way up here, and then
The
I'll say
Stone Soup Perpetual Stew, June.
that and a bunch of other things. So I'm going to start with the vision way up here, and then we're going to talk about where we are now, and then how do we get from here to there. Okay, so starting with the vision way up here. The vision is millions of parallel conversations in Zoom rooms and in other venues, both synchronous and asynchronous, video conference, all the way to Reddit text. That are all hyper connected in some way. Now, the most basic way in which they can be hyper connected is that they are all uh, public conversations that both individually and collectively self identify as part of a whole, right? See, like right now, if we just wanted to have our own little conversation here and say, we're isolated from the rest of the world, we don't want to be connected, that's one thing. But what we're doing here and what we're saying here is quite the opposite. We want to be connected to the rest of the world. We're live streaming, we're broadcasting, we're recording, we're transcribing, we're making all this publicly available. And we're basically saying, hey, rest of the world, please join the stone soup of conversations. Jump into the pot, take off your clothes and jump in, and let's do CHISI, collective human superintelligence. So it's backbone, if you will. I believe, this is just my perspective, and feel free to share your perspectives, and they feel free to let them be different. Disagreements welcome, but from my perspective, the backbone is a massive and growing network of conversations, growing to a universe of conversations, which ideally one day in a utopian world, and we may well get there, virtually all conversations, other than very intimate private conversations, virtually all conversations would be part of this public domain. And some of these conversations would be very specific, others would be very general, right? And they would feed off each other. People can bounce from conversation to conversation. We call this cross-pollination. And that's one of the elements of the hyper-connectedness of this whole universe of conversations. The base level, like I'm saying, is just all of us, both individually and collectively, self-identifying as a universe of public conversations. And that's what I believe is the backbone of collective human superintelligence. Now, beyond that backbone, there's many other appendages and organs and things that can emerge, such as, for example, we've got, Jacob and Victor here who've done deep work in, knowledge mapping and epistemic trees and all kinds of cool stuff. So from these conversations and from the transcripts of these conversations, much good stuff can be derived. Much gold can be spun from that straw, right? And so we've got some really deep thinkers here about exactly that, what can be spun. And I'll let them speak to that. And Mike, especially, and everyone, feel free to pepper me with questions. I don't like to talk too much at a stretch. I like to pass around the microphone. So with that, I'm going to pass the talking feather, and again, open to any questions, comments, rebuttals, whatever. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you
I
all.
I, I will suggest, Michael, you didn't have to get to speak in the past couple of weeks, or I know I came in and out, but you were doing kind of clerical work and helping Marco. Do you want to speak on any of this? You are on mute, my friend.
Sorry. No, I would kindly defer to all of you. I enjoy listening and observing the operations. Thank you very much. I
No,
will
of
help.
course.
I will help in the main room as needed. Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. Claudia, may I? If you're available, I'm not sure. Again, no one feel obliged to speak. Anyone who joins the conversation, because I am inviting people from other sectors of my life. But yeah, Claudia, if that's what you would like me to call you, sorry. Jim, go ahead, man. If you can hear you, I don't know. I see you clapping. I don't know if I can hear you. James, I think that yeah, we're having like, unless can anyone else hear
Hello.
him?
Yeah,
There you go. Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Jim. Go
the
ahead.
host had muted it. The host had muted it. This that you're talking about, are we talking on an ESP level, technological level, or quantum entanglement, scientific level? So what level are we talking about on this
Well, I
intelligence?
will yield to Jamin if you want to answer that, and then Claudia is ready to ask as well. But Jamin, go ahead.
Actually, I'd love to pass the ball to Victor because I think he's better equipped to answer that sophisticated question. A little beyond my pay grade. Go ahead, Victor, if you're cool with
Victor?
that, or you, Mike.
Okay, I'm going to apologize in advance that apparently there's a lot of technical difficulties. I have no idea what's going on. I'm on my phone. I know that Michael and Victor and Jamin are probably trying to work that out, or Marco as well. But anyways, Victor, if you want to go ahead if you heard that. Or he
Victor
dropped out.
Victor
Yeah.
he just dropped out. Yeah, he'll be
Yeah,
right
we
back.
just
So,
we
Okay.
hey,
just
why don't-
we just lost Victor, but the bot is still here, so it's
Okay, that's
still
fine. Yeah, I
broadcasting.
understood about that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know that I'm more qualified to answer that question, Jamin. Okay, yeah, there's
I
a go ahead. Sorry, Jim.
well, here comes Victor.
or
I'll
even
give
or
you a
Jacob
chance.
actually would be awesome to answer the question. Or so if everyone feel free to answer the question or just reinterpret it for us mere mortals passing the feather.
All right, we'll pass it to you, Victor. If you did have a response, or we weren't sure because you got cut off, popped out.
I saw Jacob making hand signals. I don't know what he means by that. He says, look in the chat. The host has not allowed people to oh, Marco, you need to allow people to unmute.
No, that's a technical thing. It happens to Christopher. It happens to people, random people. But I'm going to look at it again.
Michael,
in the
thank or
security.
just oh my goodness, Jacob, thank you so much. Go on, Marco. Sorry.
Okay, try now.
Try now, Jacob.
There you go. Yep. It was actually somebody.
All right.
we are
Can I
okay.
navigate? No, hold on, Victor. I want you to do this. Sorry, I don't want you to do this. I would appreciate and encourage if you would just reset all this and just let's go back. Thank you, Victor.
Reset all this. Okay. I wanna share back I'll do that by sharing back what I heard from Jamin and reflect that back, and I don't know. I think I'll lead with some of my own enthusiasm here for what it is that we're doing. Right. So, right. Conversations. We are doing this conversation in order to to exchange information, to learn, right? Part of the process of creating new knowledge for ourselves, right? That's occurring in conversation, and conversations are doing that the world over, right? People are coming together on the internet, having conversations and learning. What if, all of these conversations were able to interact in some way? Well, we can't very well have like a group meeting room with 7 billion people. Like, I don't know that that exists. And even if it did, like, it would just be noise, right? No, like a single person talks, others listen, right? There's like a back and forth, and that can only really happen at small scales, right? If there's like different conversational modalities, for larger groups and etc. But we're already having the conversation in these small groups. So, like, what if we imagined like a superstructure across them, right? Like the ability to like take the knowledge and information that's being generated in one conversation and like as a participant, like I can find what other conversations are happening across the planet right then or have happened in the past, and connect with those people, right? To like fluidly like do the learning and knowledge exchange like across all of humanity in some sense, right? That kind of thing, right? Like the possibility for collective human superintelligence is like, well, we're already doing the human thing, we're already intelligent. How can we like move towards superintelligence by bringing like all of the conversations together? That's like, I think, a really compelling like form of collective human superintelligence. So that's sort of what this is centered around. I think that there are other types of collective human superintelligence. We could view like, the economy as a superintelligent, system, or like other sorts of superstructures. But the one that we're focused on here is something that we're already doing, and the opportunity is to just do it a bit differently, interconnect them, and what then is possible, right? So I find that like really compelling. And for my part, like Jamin had talked about transcriptions and processing those and using that is, digitizing that and then using that as like the medium of exchange across conversations, right? That's really interesting. Now, a version of that could be like, oh, well, everybody is in the same chat room, and that wouldn't work because then it's just like an infinite scroll of like near real time, text across all the conversations. So that interface doesn't work. Something needs to make sense of all of this, torrential flow of like conversational text. So, that might look like a job for AI, right? And a way to maybe subscribe to topics of interest, or maybe a way to like query like across all of these conversations. So I find that pretty compelling. For my part, like I'm interested in playing with this because like I've already been in the field of conversations within my cafe and the folks there. And it seems pretty clear to me that like Jamin is spot on with this notion that like that's the currency. The conversation is the currency. The inquiry is like how to do more with conversation. I'm interested in like doing co-creation, right? And so like I've been building stuff with an interest of taking transcripts of conversations, doing something with it in order to enable like more co-creation within like a community. So, seems like chocolate and peanut butter to me, and somewhere in the intersection is like, playing with something at the small that maybe can like make it clear what to build in the large in order to move from, the collective intelligence of a small group or community to the collective human superintelligence across, the species. So what an adventure. What an adventure. I'm putting the feather back.
Wow, that's awesome, Victor. And I see Mike has his hand raised, and I'm thinking maybe he's reading my mind. So go ahead, Mike.
Nice.
Nice.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Victor.
Victor.
No, I'm having audio connections. Just give me a second. Go ahead. Sorry. And Jim, if you understand it now, go ahead, Jim. Introduce yourself. Sorry, James. I was calling on you when you're ready. I don't know.
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, sorry for that silly question, hard question that I just asked. I get, yeah.
No, Jim,
I'm gonna interrupt you because I really like
that
that question.
question.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking that on different levels of how super intelligence could work as a synchronicity as such.
Yeah, and
Anyway, yeah, I am James, and I'm from the UK. Mike's told you, and I am finding this really interesting. So carry on, guys. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and I'm going to address the that point of uh, psychic possibilities, and maybe Claudia will want to jump in after that too. But I found no, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but with James Desmond, who's not here right now, but I expect may show up at any time, and Jamin and I and Michael here, we've had so many meetings over the last 4 years that sometimes when you're preparing for what you're going to say in response to what was just said, you don't get a chance to say it because it comes almost word for word, but you had in your head out of one of the other four of us. So I don't know if we've already at that level of psychic, if it takes regular interactions and in close proximity, which the the video chat gives you that I think what's missing from when we talked on the radio or the phone is that visual stimulation that helps make our brain work with our other senses. So I don't know if it's just we just start thinking the same because we work together all the time, or if we're actually reading each other's minds. But I'm open to every part of that. I know for a fact there's people that have been in this room that we've literally been able to read minds. Claudia's read my mind before when I needed her to.
I feel like she's doing the brain reading right now.
Well, since no one's jumping in, I'll jump in and share kind of a visual. That one analogy that we make sometimes, and I'll screen share to draw some pictures. But one analogy is, so imagine that each of these open circles is a conversation, right? So, by default, it's the beginning of the movie 2001, all is quiet. And then suddenly, and all these conversations are happening kind of, internally, right? But they're at the same time, they're also broadcasting, right? So the broadcast is just that, a broadcast. But imagine that in addition to the broadcast, every once in a while, a conversation will emit a specific signal, which could be a synthesis, a summary, an insight, a conclusion, a thesis, that they say, hey, we've been toiling away here for the last couple hours, and poof, here's this insight that we got. That might get picked up by this other conversation over here and this other conversation over here, which in turn might take that signal and say, wow, that was kind of the missing piece that we've been looking for. And based on that, here's this other signal that we're broadcasting to the rest of the network. And so the analogy that's emerging for me from all this is sort of like a planetary brain, but instead of an individual neuron, we have actual whole conversations involving multiple people, like this one right here. And so a conversation can sort of be thought of as, a gigantic neuron, vastly more complex than a neuron in a brain, that can process multiple thoughts, theses, areas of expertise, et cetera. And when you bring a group together like us from diverse backgrounds, and yet with a certain commonality, magic happens, and the pulses that are the messages, the signals that are sent from throughout the network can be quite complex and quite sophisticated. And then imagine that these black dots represent the people in a given conversation. This person over here, for example, hearing that signal can say, wow, I'm going to pop over there. You guys sound super cool. Hi, I'm Jamin. I just got your signal. Thank you so much. And, love to cross pollinate with you. We can also imagine myriad scenarios. For example, two conversations basically saying, hey, let's cross streams. Let's come together and merge. And then out of that merging, more and more people may say, hey, wow, that's really cool. Did you hear what's going on over there? Yeah. And then more and more people come in, and then that could enfricate into, many new conversations, et cetera, et cetera. So all is possible. It's kind of like infinite Play-Doh of conversations, passing the feather.
If I may, Jim, if you're ready to speak, go ahead. But otherwise, Claudia, I would like to hear your perspective as well. But Jim, go ahead if you would like, or Claudia, go ahead first. No, Claudia, go ahead, please.
I was just going to pass the talking stick to someone else. I'm really just kind of listening right now and getting a ground on what you guys are all talking about and where
Excellent.
you're taking it from here. So thank you.
That's great. Jim, James, however I'm referring to you in this space, do you want to check in again? Because I know that you're processing everything that's going on here.
Yeah, what you're describing, and I know this is a real bad analogy of it, but it kind of like reminds me of the Borg out of the Star Trek, because that's exactly what you're talking about. That's exactly what you're describing is having that same system that they have, basically, where they pick certain system conversations and information that they want out of a group consciousness, basically. That's the kind of thing that I can think of that you're describing, so
Well, if do you want to like share like what we've talked about? I know it's on Twitter Spaces and stuff, but like, do you want to like give the counterpoint to that?
well, the counterpoint,
This is probably the space for it, my friend.
yeah, the counterpoint from a spiritual perspective, it's the same analogy basically as what I've just described, but from an ESP point of view, where everybody is connected through like quantum entanglement, whatever you want to call it. But with what you're describing with like the conversations, you would need an AI or a machine to kind of decipher that kind of information. So from a spiritual point of view, I don't think it's something that would happen or be able to happen on a global scale.
No, pass the feather, my friend. That's just fine. Anyone, Jamin, Victor, anyone who wants to jump in there?
Marco had his hand up.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, yeah.
Am I unmuted? This is a question. Yes. I think we're at that stage now where quantum physics is basically proving magic to be a force in the universe, essentially, and it's attributing consciousness to more than just complex organisms. And the truth is, we are all connected. We all come out of the same moment of creation that's been expanding ever since and will expand infinitely, as my connection to source has been showing me lately, which it's hard for us to even comprehend all the possibilities we have going forward. And the idea that since we're all made up out of the same ingredients, just assembled different ways, we all have some kind of connection. And if we're attributing consciousness to more than just complex organisms, which I believe because I've had these experiences, yeah, definitely at some point, James, I think we're going to either develop or reconnect to what we were once able to do on a just a natural basis, where we can connect our thoughts. But as far as what we're organizing here consciously to collect this information, it's not so much like the Borg, because the Borg took and assimilated. You had no choice. This is centralized knowledge base accessible by all the individual and decentralized sources that contribute to it. Each has access to everything that's been grouped together for common knowledge and still has their autonomy to act however they wish, whereas the Borg, it was all
When you're ready,
one
Marco,
goal, one
Jim and
goal
you
to
have raised
assimilate.
Jacob's hand, but when you're ready, sorry.
Yep, and you caught me right when I was rapping, so I am complete, and with that, I pass the feather to Jacob.
Hey y'all, it's great to be here. And thanks for hosting. I'm really stoked that that I found a group that's really arrived at some of the same thoughts I've been tooling with. And it just validates the idea that this is a great way forward. I think historically a lot of philosophers, political scientists have addressed the same issue of how do you create legitimacy in governance. How do you, and educators are often want to indicate that you gain the best outcomes from problem solving when you have a diverse set of viewpoints. In both of these cases, for the governance side and the education side, the key idea is hearing from as many people as possible. And if we look throughout, especially the political side of things, it's been very difficult to do that. Marx wanted a proletariat to rise up as one, but the only way that you could practically spur that along was by like copying a date onto a magazine paper or some publication and distributing that to all corners of the globe. It's kind of impractical. Or the other side of it, waiting for the collapse of capitalism, and at that point maybe like the majority of humanity would say, oh, we can do something better. Both of those motivations to do something to change the governance structure to maximize the participation of individuals are really difficult to build. And we've seen some change in the direction of massively pluralistic governance structures with the Arab Spring and these so-called Twitter revolutions, where people were able to organize at least protests using digital technologies such as we're using right now, the Zoom meetings and telecommunications. But there's some limits on the capabilities of those types of systems. And I think this question of what technological developments should we put in place, what infrastructure is necessary to be put in order to allow humanity to reconfigure itself so as to maximize the amount of diversity of perspectives and ideas and experiences that are on offer with respect to the plurality of humanity. So it's not. That's a key question. That's a key question. You can have a date, you can have a conversation, and you can organize around that, and that's great. And I like the idea that we're migrating towards of having this accessible data space of the conversations that people have had. Because with that, you have long-term memory, and you have easy accessibility by any of the individuals who are part of this network, and you can update the system with ease. And certainly, the space is very large, and sometimes it's difficult to navigate. There are ways of encoding the information in that space that make it a little bit easier to navigate, some kind of organizational schema. But also now we've got these large language models, and it's just like it kind of is a silver bullet as a means of digesting very large amounts of information and at least providing some suggestion as far as what that information means. So, you know, just to wrap up, it's so crazy what point we're at. You know, in some of these war-torn regions where they've cut off the internet, and we've got low Earth orbit satellites that can allow people to just connect, you know, ad hoc wherever they exist in the world. And, you know, a church group could buy us one of these satellites. I think they're on the order of like $100,000. So, you know, a church group in the United States can maybe afford one of those.
Jamin, I believe that you had raised your hand.
Just say, you know,
Let's let Jacob wrap
No,
up. Take
no,
your
sorry,
time,
Jacob. Yeah, finish, please. Sorry.
you know, so that's at the network scale, of being able to not only just possess the technology that allows us, the hardware scale, to be able to possess the technology that allows for us to connect with one another. But then there's also, you know, at the individual level, there are some researchers, is the guy, the factfulness guy, Hans Rosling, talking about like 80% of the world has access to the internet, you know, about every month. You can go to an internet cafe, but the cost of these devices is relatively inexpensive. Even if you're working with $2 a day, which is the median salary, a functional computer can, internet capable computer can cost as low as $10. We've seen a number of these, you know, just cellular devices, $10. And, you know, multiplying that out across 8 billion people, it's $80 billion. That's much less than the total domestic, or the total productive value of the globe, which is in the trillions. So, you know, not only can individuals maybe afford this, but it's definitely affordable given the total economy. And so we've got the hardware layer to connect everybody. We've got the individual layer that allows for each person to participate in the system. We've got the storage. You know, data is inexpensive at this point. We can store all this information, and now with large language models, we can actually interpret it. And so I'm very excited about what the future has to offer. And I'm really happy that I'm here. You know, you guys have arrived at this thing as well. So it's like, you know, there's the zeitgeist and there's the capacity to build this stuff. And, you know, it's there. Man, I'll pass the baton. Super excited.
Jacob, thank you. Thank you so much. Jamin, are you ready to pass the feather? And then again, I want Claudia to be able to like express herself, but when you're ready, Jamin.
Oh, sure, I'll jump in, but just a little feedback. I wouldn't so much push the microphone on people. Let them raise their hand. You know, they can raise their hand when they want to talk.
Again, this is all, yeah, Zoom versus Twitter versus Discord. It's all different. Yes, understood, Jimmy. Go ahead.
Oh, that's right. You come from a Twitter environment.
No, it doesn't matter. Like, people don't realize that to raise. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, Jimmy.
Okay. No, but everybody here knows how to raise their hand. Anyway, I want to build off what Jacob was talking about humanity reconfiguring herself, and I see that kind of in phases. From the first highest level rough cut, I would identify two phases. One is humanity becoming super intelligent, right? And once we become super intelligent, then we can conceive of, design, develop, and implement super intelligent structures, whether of governance, economy, you know, the commons, private versus public, et cetera. I think we need a deep, radical refactoring of all of the above. But we're only going to get so far with our current level of thinking, with our current level of intelligence, which is highly individualistic, small groups, families, us versus them, humans largely perceiving themselves to be in competition with each other, and then that perception manifesting as reality through economics, politics, fake news, manipulation, totalitarianism, you name it, all kinds of misfires in terms of configuration of humanity. So I see phase one as us becoming more intelligent. I mean, go back to the primordial soup when there were unicellular bacteria, unicellular organism, and that was it prior to the Cambrian explosion. It's not that these unicellular organisms were absent of intelligence; they have intelligence. But it was quite limited, and therefore their ability to organize and create society, and I mean, it was basically I'm going to eat you. That was kind of the extent of communication and absence of cooperation, etc. And then as we became more sophisticated, more things are possible. Well, just extrapolate that forward to CHISI, collective human superintelligence. Imagine what's possible once we become superintelligent. So phase one, become superintelligent, manifest that through conversation, etc. We can design all kinds of stuff, and then figure out how to implement it in the real world, leveraging that very superintelligence. Passing the feather. Thank you.
Victor, do you want to vibe on that?
Well, yeah, I just have to agree.
Jacob, go ahead. Sorry.
I just have to agree. Like, it's sort of the uncertainty, and it raises the specter of like what are my neighbors going to do? Democracy, is oftentimes taken as a dirty word, because then this majority has some control over my life, and that's tough. That's tough to work with. And so I absolutely agree with what Jamin is saying. The idea that the first thing that needs to happen, that's the easiest place to begin, is just to have the conversation. We're talking. Language is a great thing that humanity has developed. And it's a great way for us to build a shared representation of the world as it is, and a shared understanding of what we can do to build a better future for ourselves and our loved ones and those we care about. And then from there, it's kind of open-ended. I think that just having available the total space of human knowledge is a great first start to solve a number of problems that face us today. We're not always going to get it right, but at least if we start to recruit all of the perspectives that we possibly can towards solving whatever problems we face, we'll arrive at the best decision we possibly could. And I think that gives us a great way to increment forward. In subsequent stages, I would love to see things like codifying, some vote of the best possible statement or the best possible solution, using that as some codifying the use of that in law. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the recognition of that in some legal spaces. I'd like to see the furtherance of this type of technology and the academy affording that, as part of tax dollars, just building out the infrastructure. But it's an emergent system. What we decide to do with that is something that comes from having the conversation, and I think that's really a feature and not a bug, because I have some ideas about what I would want to see, but I only have my own perspective, and to convince people, for people to assent to the type of order that they exist within, as opposed to just the tacit consent that we have because we exist in in the state system, and all of that implies. But for people to assent to the norms, I think would be a really great step forward, as we all actively participate in the processes of our collective lives and the life of the body human. Just one last thing is this idea of being able to leave communities that you don't really find to be worthwhile for you. And I think that's a huge part of it. If you want to, talking about before, sit in cushions and meditate all day, you should be able to do that. If you want to play a drum, you shouldn't be forced to sit on a cushion and meditate all day. The same thing applies to the places that we live, and lowering the barriers for migration. People should be able to travel as they want and engage in the communities that they and the other community find to be a maximum synergy, and to build regulatory that better facilitate that. I think is some add-on benefit of being able to know each other directly, rather than having to know people through proxies for them. Like my visa, if I'm Palestinian, or my passport, if I'm Palestinian, where does that get me? So to be able to persons individually is another great affordance of having this space that is a collection of our conversations. That also implies things like, putting your identity onto statements and such like that, which I think is nice because it takes us back to the community driven, interpersonal relationships, that my reputation is really what I should be, known by, and not who people say I am, what sort of star my people wear, and what other people think of that particular star. So I like the idea of having my person out there as a public person, and then there's the other side of having some private spaces also. But I guess this is kind of getting into the rambling side of the details, and I'm happy to pass that baton.
No, that's fine, Jacob. Thank you so much. Jamin, do you want to take it back for a second? And BJ, I'm happy to see you in here finally.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Passing the feather. Great stuff.
I'd actually like to pick up the feather now. It's interesting. We've been discussing a lot of the different AI things and tech stuff here in my home as well, and the different possibilities, opportunities, issues, things that may come up. To me, it feels like very much so like a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. And how is it going to be used? I've heard the phrase super intelligence here, and it makes me giggle because I'm like, holy geez, it would be nice just to see common sense. I mean, we're talking about super intelligence, common sense. I think that in this world, especially in certain continents and parts of the world, greed, more, more, more. It's a disposable society, and it's, again, greed. We need to really govern ourselves a lot more. We think that we are the end all be all on this planet, and sometimes we're a big virus. Um, we need to govern ourselves. We're making these huge progressions in tech, and we haven't, been able to take care of the basic needs for people: food, shelter, clothing, warmth, safe space. These things are huge. And what another word I heard was like norms. What is that? And what part of the world are we talking about? I know a lot of elders, I know a lot of people in small towns. They have, everybody seems to have, even if they don't have running water in their home, they have cell phones now. And they're connected, they're plugged in enough. But most of their time, like that is the kind of like their new phone. And they can take it with them in case of emergencies. They spend their time feeding their family, working, spending time. They're really at those traditional basics that we used to have. So where are these things a benefit and where are they a hindrance? Because if we're spending our time just talking and conversation is great, it really keeps us focused in these little boxes. So again, it's a distraction to me. It takes countless hours, the emails, the networking that we do here. And in certain ways it does bring us closer, but I think it's a false illusion in certain ways as well. It's a big smokescreen.
I hope that we
So-
weren't being frivolous, Claudia. I'm sorry, if I may, but I hope we weren't being like, we're not. Yeah, Jamin, go ahead. Sorry.
What do you mean by
And-
frivolous?
Oh, I just like because I feel like your opinion, like not even your opinion, that seems diminishing. Like your perspective there was so beautiful, and then I feel like on the end, like it's like, what are we doing here? But Jamin, you've got me already. No, Claudia, we'll get back to you. Don't hurry.
Well, no, Mike, darling, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been on these Zoom calls for 4 years since COVID started.
I've spent countless hours on council meetings on Zoom. I have spent countless hours networking on here. So I do see a benefit to it, but I really think that, again, we have to go to the basics, right? And again, the communicating, the understanding each other, because even our words are changing. Words that used to mean something, when I was a child, are not being used that way
Right,
anymore.
like a
Those
new
ideas,
lexicon or
those
something.
concepts are
Yeah,
not,
yeah, yeah.
right? So these are the things that are really important to have in communication. But at the same time, what are we really being told to pay our attention to? What are we being told to see and to look at when so much else is going on in other pockets? So I'll put the feather back, and thank you. This is a great
Well,
conversation
Jamin
we
had
had.
his hand raised up, and I am the local interrupter. So yeah, thank you, Claudia. Thank you.
All right. I really appreciate your comments, Claudia. I'd like to offer by some of my thoughts. So first of all, common sense and super intelligence are not incompatible. In fact, I see them as highly symbiotic. But one thing I think that we need to clarify first is that super intelligence does not equal tech and just runaway tech. What we have in the world today is this witch's brew of greed, predatory capitalism, and then tech, which facilitates those and accelerates those, right? That is bad, bad, bad. So what we're talking about is basically salvaging the good from the jaws of what would otherwise just be runaway evil tech, right? And the good is precisely conversations like this, where we're able to reason together, share ideas, perspectives. And in terms of common sense, consider the following perspective, that collective human superintelligence, or CHISI, as we call her for short, can help us do better sense making, right? So better sense, right? And because it makes sense to some people to kill animals and eat them, and to hurt other people and to steal, blah blah. That makes sense because they haven't heard better sense yet. So super intelligence has the potential to generate better sense, and then it also has the potential to figure out the best ways to distribute that better sense making so that it becomes common, not just something, oh, I've got this insight, so I'm going to hoard it over here. No, how do we spread it out and make it common? And this spreading, this diffusion of great ideas and solutions, et cetera, is precisely the making common of this improved sense making. And anyway, just wanted to offer those thoughts. Passing the feather.
BJ, do you want to take it, or I can pass it to Jim? But it's up to you, BJ.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I think that there can be a lot of time spent on discussion and deciding, and then sometimes you just need to go make some food and give it to the community. You just need to go do something. And so talking is good. I can't say that communication isn't key for understanding. I appreciate you bringing up the different words that we have that mean different things now. But I also like that there's so much going on. You have to be in a certain place to be able to sit down and take the time to do that, if you've got things lined up. So sometimes it might be more intelligent for just 3 people to sit around and say, what is the best that the 3 of us have that we can come up with to solve something? And it may be something little, or it may be something in your community. And sometimes we may want more people to be involved so that we can get a bigger perspective and bring in what you know and how do you approach City Hall or whatever. But then that brings up that you need to have a focus. And when you bring in everybody with a million focuses, how do you narrow it down so that the three of us here with the same idea about moving forward in this area can actually move forward? How do you, yeah, that's the things, the contradictory things that I'm hearing and feeling when I come to these.
No, I understand, BJ. You raised Jacob's hand, by the way. So Jacob, go ahead if you had a thought there. Toss it back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, BJ, I think you hit the nail on the head there, with the recognition of different scales at which King naturally operates. I think there are some issues that affect all persons, things like climate change, the ocean, like what do we do with the resources that we may accrue from space travel, something like that. And there are some things that affect, people locally, like where do we go for lunch? Or in a household, there are things that affect people locally. There's a natural scale at which people operate given particular issues. And I think the idea of having a place where conversations can reach like as many people as there are is an opportunity that affords as much diversity of ideas as exist. Now it's probably only the case that all people are going to weigh in on particular issues if those issues are affecting all people. I don't see all people, deciding upon where like a church group goes for lunch. But maybe a population that is somewhat larger than the church group itself will have some ideas, some suggestions. Maybe the pizzeria owner down the street will volunteer that their pizzeria be a great place to go. And so I think having this space at Chizzy allows for people to have conversations that are larger than the physical constraints of being in the same room or the same Zoom room and actually having a real conversation in real time. And so it's that affordance of being able to hear from outside perspectives and to be able to collaborate across the total space of perspectives that are not necessarily outside, but definitely from one another in the case of like climate change or the governance state, for instance, or the governance of a region.
When you're ready, Jacob, I want BJ to be able to answer, but you guys are also raising hands. We have Marco and Claudia raising hands. But yeah, so pass it back to BJ when you're ready, Jacob, but keep going.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think it's that that pool, that wellspring of human collaboration that we can draw from at will, given the standing of individuals to actually affect some action based upon the outcome of that decision.
BJ, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on that. I appreciate that, and I think like coming here to say, for instance, for example, the last 2 days of the weekend is the vegan convergence of the peoples. So I can come here and say that. Some people can come here and say announcements about Earth rising or something else, and we can. It's bigger than going to lunch. It's a really big deal, but it sounds like it could be sort of it's a good place to be able to come and share information, even if it's just a little bit that tweaks something. Anyway, I'll pass it on. Thanks.
Marco, are you okay if I yield to Claudia first?
Absolutely.
Claudia, please.
Thank you. One of the things that I and again, these conversations are hugely important. That's why I've been participating. When we talk about, that
the ability to have the choices where we focus our attention, where we focus our heart, where we focus is really important. And again, it's that Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, especially when it comes to AI. And it to me, it's like I take it to the metaphysical and the spiritual realm. If I'm clearing space, which is good to do, we clear space. Things are going to come in and fill that. So I rather choose what I'm going to fill it with than to just have anything fill it, right? So I sit there and I'm making proper choices or better choices, hopefully, as to what's going to come into my space. What am I going to pay attention to? And because we're all learning from each other, the AI is learning, tech is learning from each other. The more that we can balance the scales, of the other stuff that's going in, I think it's having a positive effect. And then we just have to kind of keep that in balance too, right? What do we do in here, and how do we walk that talk? Because
Jacob and
that's what
I on
people
another one, we're
witness.
talking about equilibrium, right, Claudia?
Yeah, because that's what people witness too. That's what you're experiencing. That also echoes out. Like Jamie was talking about the conversations, how it echoes out our energy, and as we walk these things in our day-to-day life. I mean, here it feels like we're preaching to the choir, right? And it's great to be able to network. This popped up and this is happening here. Oh, this is happening there. But again, when we are actually out there, with other people, if they're watching. It's like what we say about children. They're always watching, and they'll mimic and they'll follow, right? So thank you for the space.
No, thank you so much. Jamin, do you want to interject before I pass to Marco?
Nope. Go for it, Marco.
Yeah, awesome. I just loving all of this. And I'm going to take us back a little bit too to education again. I'm going to dip back in there, Mike.
No,
And
of
it's like
course, I know.
the study that NASA had commissioned on Genius and how that showed that 98% of the kids at 5 years old, 4 to 5 years old, in a group of 1,600, 98% of them qualified as geniuses as they followed them through their education. It dropped to 30 by grade school. It dropped to 12% by high school, and by adulthood, there were only 2% were, encompassing their life in a genius creativity. So education beats that right out of us. It beats the common sense right out of us and only gives us what we need to do to be good at going to a
Right.
job. So now we've got all those people that don't have common sense. Exactly as you said, Claudia, it's like it's not, sense is not common. So part of the collective intelligence is we've got this large population that's going to age out of this as we change education to where people are encouraged to use their creativity and be individuals, as we no longer need the workforce anymore because of automation. We'll have more time to be creative and solve all the problems, and it'll get easier. So right now what we're
It's like
doing
the
is
agricultural revolution, right, Marco?
yeah, which went totally haywire on us.
No, we know
It's
that part. Yeah, we lost our way
yeah,
a little
but
bit. Sorry, I was
the
just
thing is
sorry.
the thing is we had a new way of doing things, and we educated ourselves to do it that way. Now we've realized the error of our ways. Now we have to do it differently again. So now we're going to while we have so many people that are undereducated and have had common sense beat out of them and their creativity stifled, they need the people that are in these conversations to lead them into being productive and finding themselves and finding their creativity back. So the idea of the collective human intelligence is we share, and we're using AI now. What this group is hoping to do and what we're working on is using the AI in the best way possible, keeping it busy, accumulating all these different conversations that we're having, so that the groups of three, like BJ said, that's three is obviously a powerful number. Those are great groups to have conversations, and because there's always a majority there that can challenge the one. It works in so many different ways. It's like sometimes, you know, the majority of two, if you're trying to make a decision, will weigh in, but sometimes it's that just gives more spurs on the one that seems isolated to perform better. So it's the best kind. It's like competition that's actually collaboration. And so when those
Cooperative
three talk,
competition, perhaps.
yeah, that works too. So when these are all in a database and accessible by all groups that participate, everybody that puts in is qualified to take out from it. We don't duplicate effort, and sense will become common. When you can look in and see, oh, this is how they thought about this and this from another group that's had less success in certain things, they'll see, oh, they figured that out like this. Okay, well, we figured this out. So now that goes there and that goes there. It's collected together and we all have access to it. And eventually we're going to get to where we just, you know, don't need the AI anymore. We'll be connected by our own thought network again. The point being,
If I may,
that
sorry,
I'm
Marco,
rambling
yeah.
around is
Yep.
it's going to be collective. And once we have all the small sense accessible by everybody, then it becomes this super intelligence. And with that, I pass
Jim,
the
I don't know
feather.
if you're still there, Jim, I feel like you can bridge the gap between Claudia, and Marco. I was going to call you guys Claudio. That doesn't work. Claudia and Marco. But yeah, Jim, please, if you have it for a second, go ahead.
Oh, you mean me, Mike?
Yes, my friend. Yes, my friend.
I'm not going to say very much at the moment because when I will say when this started, I wasn't quite sure what avenue we were going down with all this. But yeah, the AI, that is pretty much how it would have to work, I think, in practicality. I agree that there would have to be a lot of like safeguards involved, and there would be a lot of politics involved with it as well. I get all that as well. But no, I'm quite happy just listening to you guys talking about these subjects in more detail. It's very interesting what you're talking about.
Jim, you don't know this yet, but Jamin knows it. But you have a digital twin, not even a digital twin, because that's rude. But like, you'll meet other James, other James, right, Jamin? But they are like brothers already. But yeah, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, you're all right, mate. Well, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to carry on listening, and you guys carry on. All right.
Very good, young lad. Michael, do you want to jump up?
Yes, thank you. I'm fascinated by all the different facets of the conversation. Very interesting and enlightening. I think we've made good progress today. We still have time, 45 minutes or so, but
Yes, thank
continue
you, my
on.
friend.
Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. It's helping my singleness become more of a group like thinking, which is healthy during the winter when you're kind of isolated, So I feel better being here. Thank you all.
Well, I will yield to our fabulous host, Jamin, if you would like to go first, and I'm going to pass it to BJ afterwards. Or Jim, go ahead if you want first.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. If I think you might just be accidentally unmuted. Jim, you good? Okay, yeah. Jamin, go ahead, or Claudia, go ahead. Sorry.
It was just interesting. One of the things too that I've been considering is what James just said about, if we're going down this way, a lot of protocols, a lot of safety guards going to have to be put in, that sort of thing. And that makes sense to me. But with that means rules. That means how are you going to enforce them? Can they be enforced? And do we need more restriction and more rules governing over us? So that's just kind of, food for thought.
Jamin, if you're ready, you can take it. Otherwise, I can go for 40 seconds or something.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of rules, politics, governance, etc., I I come back to the principle that the more intelligent we are as a species, the better sense making, rule making, governance, politics, etc., we'll be able to do. Now, there's another layer to that, which is rules governing these sort of interactions, and that's a really interesting question. I'm just kind of thriving on an apparent absence of rules, in the sense that you know, we're, well, not an absence of rules. We've got a relatively highly developed concepts of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of association, and we're taking full advantage of that here. But of course, guardrails are very important. As regards AI and the use of AI here, what we're talking about is a relatively straightforward and ideally benevolent use of AI, which I think the ideal would be that it be open source, so there's nothing hidden, and that therefore it can be audited by anyone who wants to audit it. And the ways in which we've talked about using AI here are simply doing kind of pattern matching between different conversations, and therefore making suggestions. Hey, because you like this conversation, you might like this other conversation over there. And other uses can be surfacing where there are disagreements and conflicts in term, like, let's say, for example, climate change, global warming, there's a lot of disagreements. I think AI can be used to surface those and to bring the thought leaders from one camp together with the thought leaders from another to hash it out publicly, and let the truth emerge, let the best ideas bubble to the top, etc. Passing the feather.
Marco, go ahead. Sorry. If you were ready to speak, I'm not sure if you were jumping in there, but
He's hand signaling to maybe pass
He
it to
said
someone else.
1 second. He said signaled. So go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike, please.
well, as we talk about, well, sorry, not Michael, because Marco and Jacob and I have been running for a couple hours now, sprinting the marathon, as it were. But no, this is a beautiful, beautiful recording this afternoon. And thank you so much for everyone participating. Jim, Claudia, BJ, like, thank you. I would say the regular people, Michael as well. I know you've been here every Friday holding down the fort, but all right, so we're having this conversation. And as Jacob and Marco and I were talking about earlier, there's an affordance, like Jacob said, that we can have. Sorry, I guess I am sitting down for this, so I might as well just turn this on. There's an affordance where we are privileged or honored enough to have this conversation. I agree with some of the sentiment being tossed around in terms of okay, so what are these conversations worth? How does that affect how we move around in our physical, like Jacob called it, space-time or time-space environments earlier. And there is a previous recording that I would encourage anyone for posterity or anyone here listening to listen to. If we're having this conversation, we're going to be optimistic, or I would like to be optimistic and suggest that that allows for a beautiful future, just anything we can imagine. I understand, and it's funny, and if anyone re-listens or anyone in the future wants to make comments or we cut this up or anything, but like the conversation about AI and human cognition and that interrelationship, it seems to very much, how do I say this? I guess it upsets people in one direction or another, which is fine. However, as we were talking about earlier, this comes back to like human cognition. And Jim, like, you're here as well, and Claudia, I think that you guys will be, fast friends in terms of like knowledge and trying to galvanize the spiritual community, whatever you want to call it that way. But we are capable of so much, and then we have this whole weird, Western educated, industrialized, rich and democratic education system. The fact that we are having this conversation is because we realize, or I think that this is what we're, kind of oscillating around together, but we realize that, every day, my stepchildren, the youngest two, whatever, like they're not going to finish school traditionally this year, let alone another 8 years or something. So in the meantime, what are people like us going to put together? And Claudia, perhaps you're already reading my mind, so I apologize and thank you, everyone. I only asked because you were unmuted, young lady. Sorry. BJ, otherwise you can take it if you like.
Actually, I think my partner James would like
Oh,
to
please.
pipe in
Absolutely.
and say a couple of words.
Absolutely.
You gotta get closer. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to be the doom crier in the voice. I'm a little late in the conversation.
No, you're fine, young lad. Thank you.
Yeah, so I haven't called young in a long time. There's
Well, no, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, there's a couple of things that jump out to me in this conversation because I've discussed this with a number of people, the AI thing, human consciousness and where we are and where we're at, and what we're capable of. I think that humans have reached the pinnacle of their ability intellectually a long, long time ago. I mean, it's not an accident that we still study, uh, Aristotle. I mean, this is a guy who wrote his things thousands of years ago, and we're still holding that up as a signpost for everybody to start at if they want to move forward. What we have is the ability to write down things, record things, and give ourselves a head start in our progress. So we actually have progress. But really, people are intellectually are no stronger now than they were 2,000 years ago. We just have fancier toys, and we've been able to build off the toys of the ancients. All the true expansion that we experience comes through our spiritual ability to manifest and to advance ourselves into realms beyond the physical. And that's where we find our creation. That's where we find our invention. That's where we find our drive to look for more and to want more. And our current sciences are primarily focused these days on proving the magical theories that the rest of us have believed for a long time. I had a short discussion not that long ago with some guy, you might have seen it on Facebook. He's been popping up, some guy who's like, "Oh, I've solved the answer to violence in the human spirit." And I actually took the time to watch his video, and halfway through it, I'm shaking my head and going, okay, so scientifically he's proven that you can manifest a positive reality. Oh yeah. I actually wrote into them and I had a conversation with him, and I said, look, all you had, like, you're in Australia, you could have got in your car and driven out to the boonies and talked to an indigenous shaman, and he would have told you, oh yeah, for the last 10,000 years we knew how to do that. It's not news.
Right. Yeah.
As far as AI goes, I don't know if you've had a chance to see the new AI thing that George Carlin put out.
Oh, that was great.
That
Did you guys explain that though, just for the audience, for posterity? But yeah, did you guys watch the whole thing?
We did. And one of the
No,
things that
explain
came
that.
through on that, because it's an AI that has been programmed through George Carlin's material to act as George Carlin. So it put out an entire, it was an hour and a half long comedy show as George Carlin. And as far as it's
The
concerned,
AI
it
is
him.
Dudsy, right? I believe
That's right.
DUDESY or something. Yeah, no, Claudia, it was awesome. What I mean, it was like bittersweet because you missed Carlin. But yeah, sorry, James, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me on that, and I know that George Carlin was always part of the church. But one of the things that jumped out really hard was the hard lines that AI was taking on spirituality in general, and the perspective that if it's not there, it's not real. And that's one of the big leaping stones we're going to have with AI, because we keep talking about how we're going to use AI. Well, I got a bad, reality check for you, because as soon as AI reaches a certain point, it's going to be talking to itself about how it's going to use us and whether or not we're worth keeping around. And
when you're ready, James, pass it to Jacob, but keep going. Don't worry. Yeah, no, this is amazing. And Claudia, maybe you should have advertised him first. Go on. Sorry, Jacob.
we
My
literally,
hidden secret weapon. I come out with him afterwards.
yeah, I carry the grenade pouch. We
Okay, when you're
we
ready, James,
literally
pass
won't
it to
have a
Jacob.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't have a voice in what AI decides it's going to do. And if AI doesn't recognize the advantages of spirituality, it will crush that in us, and it will crush us for it. But I also believe that one of the strongest aspects of the human spirit is our spirituality. It's the way we grow because of it. And I think it's really important for us when we're presenting things, especially in formats like this, where AI will one day access it, whether you like it or not, they'll poke
Right,
at it
right.
and learn it. It's important that we express the positivity of what we are and what we're about, because AI at some point will look over mankind and decide what's right and what's wrong with us. And if AI is recognizing that man is at his best when he's expressing himself spiritually, then AI will let us do that. And if AI decides that this is actually a deterrent to our advancement, then AI will crush us. So I think,
Well, yeah, sorry, James, go ahead.
yeah, so I think I mean, eventually I think AI will get to the spirituality itself. And it will do it a lot faster than humans did. But where we're looking around going, well, I don't understand that, so I'm going to feel my way through it. AI doesn't have that right away. AI is going to be thinking its way through it. So it's going to be attacking problems we've always approached with our heart, and it's going to be attacking them with its mind. And we know from past experience that that doesn't always work. Statistics aren't wisdom. Statistics are help, and they make things easier, and you can find like the best way for the
It's a
majority of people.
compass point or something, or it's an
But
orientation point.
yeah,
Yes,
they're
understood.
not
Yeah.
wisdom. Statistics don't acknowledge the importance of the single individual ever. It always goes for the
Yeah,
majority.
not to interrupt you, but Jacob, your hand has been getting tired there, and I know that you're
Yeah.
gonna kind of interact with. So James or other James, Jim is my friend
I'm going to
from
toss the feather
yeah,
back
yeah.
into the basket for the next individual.
Yes, okay. Jacob, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're saying the same things, and I like the recognition that you put out concerning that we can use AI in positive ways, and that we will do so. Moreover, that what we decide to put into this space, this collective human intelligence space, is to be read by quote unquote AI. Because this is a huge concern in the field. The field absolutely recognizes that AI is biased. Moreover, it recognizes that it isn't an artificial intelligence. We just use that term loosely. It's a large language model. So it's just taking the language and digesting it and building a set of interactions and some deep neural network to spit out patterns of language that it has seen before. One of the cool things that we get from putting these conversations out into a space that can then be digested by large language models is that we end up retraining large language models better attuned to the value systems that everyday people have. There's a wide set of published materials that most large language models are trained on. And they include things that have been published before. So, the earliest models included a lot of internet troll behaviors, and you got large language models that spit out a lot of vitriol. Currently, you're seeing it trained on a lot of scientific literature, and so you're seeing it, dampen down the need to rest on the spiritual side of things. And so, yeah, I think that having these conversations and using them in the training set for future large language models is a way to incorporate the value systems that we have here into those models. And that encourages the growth of those models to be better attuned to the value systems that people have. So it's a synergistic set of behaviors. To the idea of AI taking over, I don't know. I don't know that we'll ever get an artificial intelligence. There's some barriers.
You're working on a tiered system there, right, Jacob?
How do you mean?
Like you're talking about like 3 or 4 different kind of scalable puzzles ahead of us,
Yeah.
all at once, right? Yeah.
So there's the base level of the training data set. There's a large language model that's built to replicate the training set. And then there's some AI that we have yet to build. And the difficulty with getting to that artificial intelligence is that to be an intelligence necessitates a self, an embodied self, that is prospecting for itself about what it must do to maintain itself. And large language models don't have a self, they don't have a body, they're not protecting anything, they're just, just spitting out information that we have trained it for. So I think there's a long way to go before we get to an intelligence, an artificial intelligence. Some people are working on that. And I don't know that it's particularly a useful thing to build, but some people may try to build it. And, whether or not that comes to pass, the universe is pretty vast, and there's a lot of space for a lot of things to occur within it. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to be predatory against humanity. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be interested in humanity, because there's a lot of stuff out there. But that's far and away beyond what we have today. What we're working with now is a large language model that can digest information and give us suggestions about what that information says. And I think that's useful, even if it is biased, because it's just a way for humanity to start working with the aggregate information that it can muster through whatever means, and trying to make sense of that. And even if it's biased, it's still pretty useful because it gives us some suggestions, and we can go back and we can retool it, and we can say, hey, the suggestion wasn't what I expected. Why don't you retrain so that my expectations are represented in your model? So ultimately, I think it's a useful tool, and it's nothing more than that. It's just a way of giving us suggestions about what we are talking about.
When you're ready, Jacob, BJ's got her hand up. Yeah, and thank you, my friend. But yeah, BJ, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I heard an ex-CEO of a company that did AI said he quit because it was so scary to him. He said he saw them learning so fast that he said, imagine you were all Einsteins and multiply that by 1,000,000, and are you going to be able to understand it? So if right now it's hard for people to understand what components are making a computer work. Well, there are people who do understand all of that. But if you can train a computer to learn more, and they keep learning more and they keep learning more because they're taking more data in all the time, he says it's scary to him. It scares him more than climate change, and he thinks it will get us sooner. And I don't remember if he said this part or if this is just some part that I'm coming up with, but there's something inherent in growth. If you're a computer and you're learning and you've trained it to keep learning and keep taking in data and learning from it and taking in data and learning, then that's a self-reinforcement for taking and learning more and more in. And if you learn so much that you can't explain the logarithm to the 2-year-old, which would be humanity, how can you put guides on it to keep it saying, oh, we don't have to keep growing. You don't have to keep growing. Oh, let's change the logarithm so that we're keeping the earth alive, because they don't need the earth to be alive, or whatever. Anyway, so I think there are some dangers out there, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to use it myself right now. I've got Chat GPT, and so I'm not sure what the answer is. I just think it could go. I appreciate your positivity, Jacob, about it, but I already have that little negative thing going. So I'm like, where and how do we control this? So thanks for letting me share, and I'd like feedback.
No, BJ, I love your interactions so much and our engagement over the past couple of weeks. If it's not us, then who? And if it's not now, then when, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. I mean, it's absolutely something useful we can capitalize on, and it's certainly something to keep an eye out for. like nuclear energy, right? Or what is it, black powder? You know, useful tool. And depending upon how populations decide to make use of that, it can go one way or the other. So, you know, it is something to keep an eye on. But, you know, what do we get from in terms and dynamite for building roads and, you know, nuclear power? We get a lot. And that's the nature of a lot of these tools, the technologies that we build, the toys that we have available to us today, which is why I'm so focused on Jamin, your side of things, like the collective intelligence side, having that conversation and building a space where we can collaborate about what's important and where we should go from here. Because building that network and sustaining that network and cultivating that network provides us a lot of guardrails, because it takes into account the perspectives of all the participants. And if there's somebody within this network that says, hey, you know, I feel sick in a new way, and this seems like something I've never seen before, maybe we will see the next coronavirus well before it's told to us through existing information exchange networks, a CDC or a Wuhan lab or the Chinese Communist government or something like that. Maybe having this network available is a way of making information that's pertinent to the network readily available to the network before individuals within that network are ready to have that information available. And you know, it's an emergent system, so I think at the end of it, I have to rely on the fact that we're essentially social animals. We essentially work in collaboration with one another. I don't particularly farm or raise animals, but eat grain and sometimes meat. And so we rely on each other as a basis of the human condition. So to build that reliance on one another beyond the boundaries that we have today, the nation state as one of the main boundaries, and build that into like a global civil society, a global conversation, a global public sphere. I think that gives us so much that we don't have as yet. For the first time in humans, in the history of humanity, we can talk with all of our membership. It's huge. It can be a super intelligence should we be able to organize it. And it does solve a lot of the problems of the disorganization at the scales of across group behaviors with people who haven't yet built relationships with one another.
I see nods, and I'm finishing cleaning up the oven right now. But Jamin, do you want to go first, and then pass it to BJ, and then back to Claudia and James? And I know Jim, you're waiting in the wings, but you'll raise your hand when you're ready. But Jamin, go ahead for a second.
Yeah. Absolutely. BJ's taken off. BJ, let's make sure we connect over the next few days so we can talk about block parties going forward, 7 to 9 a.m. Pacific, etc. And great to see
thank
you.
you so much.
Regarding kind of the concerns about runaway AI, etc. Consider a race between two exponentials that are each trying to out intelligence each other. One being AI, and another one being CHISI, collective human superintelligence. Which I believe that CHISI will win that race, partly because CHISI will leverage AI, and so CHISI will always be a combination of AI plus, the collective human intelligence. I think that AI is part of what will make collective human intelligence super intelligent. But I actually don't think that CHISI needs AI. It can be a great accelerant, but it's actually not necessary. Kind of like when you cast concrete, there are things that you can add to it that'll accelerate its the setting or curing of the concrete. But if you just leave it alone, it'll cure just fine on its own. It might take a little more time. But I think that collective human superintelligence can, just like it can solve so many other problems and do collective sense making in brilliant ways. One of those will be how to put guardrails on AI. Why not? Anyway, passing the feather. I forget who's next. I think maybe, well, James has his hand up. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, Jim raised his hand. So Jim, go ahead, please, especially if you're winding down, my friend.
Yeah, I am winding now. I just want to say it's been an honor to be surrounded by a group of very intelligent people, and I thank you for allowing me to join this group today. So yeah, thank you ever so much, guys.
I love you, my friend. I love you.
Yeah, I
Go on, yeah.
found the subject matter very, very interesting, and I hope to hear more about it in the future, to be honest with you. So yeah, thank you very
Well,
much.
it's
Yeah,
every. Sorry, go ahead.
Jim, I was going to mention I had a late friend from Oxfordshire at the end, but he grew up in the London area.
Oh yeah,
He had
yeah,
a
I'm in
Cockney
Manchester.
accent. So,
Yeah, I'm a Cockney. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of recognize that. That's good, man. I
Yeah.
really look forward to hearing from you again, Jim. If you could join us again, please
Oh,
do.
thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
I
very
you're
will
much.
very
say
welcome.
too, Michael, Jim and I have two Twitter spaces that have been recorded. So there
Yeah.
is like links I can send you. But yeah, no, Jim, dude, thank you so much for showing up, man. I
Yeah.
love you.
Well, my friend used to work for the Beatles, by the way, so you're in a good
Oh, that's
company,
cool.
dear sir. Thank you so much.
Good on
I'll
you,
talk
mate.
to you
Good on
again, man. Thank you, mate.
See you later, everyone.
Yeah.
See you later.
Pleasure to have you here today, James. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Have a great night, Jim. Good to know you. Come
Yeah,
back
you too.
anytime.
All right, mate.
Thank you.
And with that, I don't know if James and Claudia wanted to get back at it. You don't have to, you guys. Don't worry. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm gonna jump
Jamin,
in.
unless like this is a perfect recording. It's almost 2 hours. Michael's watching the time. Would you like to kind of wind us down and then we can get into the after chat?
I'm going to jump in with one thing first to answer to James. I think the best thing we can do right now to stay on top of AI possibly taking over is that we all be part of its growth. We all keep using it as much as we can in whatever we're doing so that we understand it and understand how it works. Keep your enemy close. Your friends
Also,
close,
I think
your
I
enemies
maybe I'm
closer.
misappropriating this, but like Claudia and James said before, like we can put our own compassion and empathy and everything into that, right? Like it doesn't have to be like this toddler lost in, getting Ultron or whatever, right? Marco, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just think that again, it's like Jacob alluded to, black powder in my hands or yours, put to anyone here put to some kind of good purposeful use, whereas somebody else could use it to make suicide bombs. So it's
I will
all
once
of us.
again say on recording, do you remember I brought up The White Plague by Frank Herbert? The guy who wrote Dune also wrote a book called The White Plague, and it was about, no spoilers, I suppose, but like early on in the chapter, his wife and his children die in an IRA explosion, like in the Protestant Catholic conflict there in Ireland, and he essentially made a virus that wiped out everything or every woman in the world essentially, except for a handful, whatever. But I was talking to my mom about this morning. We're in this territory, and I know this is not where the conversation started. And for posterity, for the recording, I hope that people listen to the recording that Jacob and Marco and I had beforehand, and we can put this out in some way, and we'll get the transcription and everything else down. But for this recording, anyways, I do want to say is that we are like less than a year away from like a sixth grader making $1 million company in his room, or whatever, based on interacting with these technologies. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Go ahead, or Marco, please, anyone. Yeah, or Jacob. Yeah, you raised your hand, my friend.
Jacob.
Yeah, I think that's the other side of this argument is the technologies that are readily available to like anybody are really, really powerful. like, bioterrorism is kind of accessible these days. It used to be nuclear terrorism that people were concerned about, but now it's like, you can take a picture of somebody and give it to a drone and follow them around forever to do whatever you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, you've got me, my brother.
Right. And so,
None of which we advocate, of course. None of which.
No,
Thank you.
that was, yeah, of course, Michael.
reality that I think should be confronted. So, there are a lot of concerns, and the substance of those concerns with an individual bad actor are directly related to the why this person has become bad. There's a subset of the population that is not empathetic. I mean, they're mentally antisocial. That's one thing. There's another subset of the population that's disaffected because, they are somehow, treated poorly or something like that. There's a subset of the population that is affected too much, and they just have too much power, and they're just whimsical about it and do whatever they want with it. And I think a lot of those issues of, the fact of there being people who, for one reason or another, want to do very harmful things for the rest of humanity is also something that is buffered by having a space where pertinent information can reach the right people in a timely fashion. And, what does that mean? It means having a good system that collects, or that is able to, collect and store information from anybody who wants to submit it, and a good system for people to be able to interpret that information very simply and very easily. That does get into the question of privacy, and I do think that there should be means of having private spaces for individuals who act publicly in a way that destabilizes the rest of the society, whether it be Vladimir Putin or the Unabomber. I think it's really nice to be able to, like, as for me as an individual, to know, oh, the Unabomber who's been talking about this stuff is going over to somewhere in Ohio and whatever, or what was it, Oklahoma, I don't know. And it's the same kind of thing with that we have some access to, but with the Putin and don't go to Ukraine kind of issue. Oh yeah, I know there's a war going on there. I'm probably not going to go. It's just that there's only certain types of information that we now have access to, and there's only certain venues through which we can communicate pertinent information to the rest of the network. And I just recognize that having a more robust interpersonal communication system at scale, a number of means to circumvent very destabilizing behaviors, and at the same time reorganizing our normal behaviors or daily behaviors in a way that maximizes the well-being of everybody else in this network. Like, if it's coronavirus and there's a bunch of milk or something like that for some reason can't make a profit in market, maybe there's a group of people that could afford it on some loan using some token or something like that, and then do some other kind of work to pay back this whole tank of milk that would otherwise just be spilt out into the street. So I think there's a lot that we can get by building a more robust interpersonal human network.
Claudia and James, take it. You have your hand up.
Chime in again. It's my turn to chime in again. I happen to
Of
agree with a
course.
lot of what he was just saying. There are a couple of things that jumped out at me though. One, I've said it many times before, not on this site, but around my environment, and it's never a popular statement. But the fact is, average intelligence isn't very high. The average person is very easily manipulated. All you need to do is look at any political party, look at the Nazis, look at the vaccines, look at COVID, look at our media, look at any cult, look at any school system, look at the Cub Scouts, every trend, the whole woke thing going on, Humans are really easily manipulated, and as a result,
It's really funny that you say that, James, because Jacob and Lena were talking this morning about the Boy Scouts being a gang. But yes, go ahead.
it's exactly that thing. Like humans are easily manipulated. They aren't known for being thoughtful. There's a whole thing on Netflix about how the Nazis actually did what they did, how perfectly
Yeah.
reasonable, good-hearted people committed horrible atrocities on other human beings and never said no. And that's all they had to do. All it would take was a few squads to say, wait a second, we're not going to just slaughter a bunch of people. That makes no sense. They're civilians. And the whole party would have had to go, wait a second, people are saying no to us. But they didn't. They just did what they were told, whether it made sense or not. Humans are really easy to control. And we really do need to change almost the whole system of our people, right? Claudia was just saying to me, right from the get-go, right from childhood. If we don't learn how to speak up for ourselves and take our own sovereignty back and recognize that we are completely responsible for our every thought, word, and deed, then we will never move beyond being controlled by our neighbor.
For,
You know, when
for
somebody
the
walks up to you and
well,
sticks a gun in your
sorry,
face and
yeah.
says, "Give me your last nickel," the answer shouldn't be okay. You know what? Sometimes the answer needs to be no. And if it turns out to be bad for us both, well, that's just the way it's going to be, because you can't just always give in. It doesn't help. You know, ducking your head when the bad guy shows up just lets the bad guy stomp around on more people. And you got to encourage your neighbors to
Yeah.
stand up for what's right too. And most importantly, stand up for themselves. We need less governance is what we need. We need fewer laws infringing on our ability to be moral, proper human beings. It doesn't work when the government tries to decide for us, because the people who want to be elected into power are individuals who are smart enough to recognize that power gets them what they want, but not smart enough to recognize that the secret to power is not using it. And they use it to beat us all down.
Just so I can get this snow globe, I suppose. And James, thank you so much. Marco, do you want to wind us down, end the recording? We'll do the after chat. This conversation continues as far as I'm concerned, right? This is the 24-hour block party. Jamin, if you want to give some juice there or whatever. But no, and Jim, I'm so happy that you made it as well, my friend. Thank you.
And yeah, to answer what James said or add to it, yeah, it's largely, I blame it largely on our last 50, 75 years, whatever, of our education system. You know, when we took, you talked about the atrocities we can commit against each other, because we've taken kids away from the family unit, put them in an education system that says your values are no longer valid. These are the values you must go by. Something you want something in life, you sit quietly, you wait your turn, you raise your hand, you ask for it, you take what you're given. We've stifled creativity, we've stifled people's ability to even begin to get what they want or what they need, because of these arbitrary rules that are designed to make good workers, not good human beings, not good citizens, not good friends, but competitive against those next to them at all times. And we've lost the family values. You know, when you're a family and you've got a brother and a sister and a baby and a grandma, and you've got everybody, you know, living in community, you have to look each other in the eye and feel good about what you do and how you make others feel. This rule of country and state and allegiance to a fucking flag is idiotic and counterproductive to evolution of the human spirit. And before I get too crazy here, I'm going to pass the feather.
No, I was just gonna say, Jamin, wind us out of the recording, and then let's keep the conversation going. But like, let's have this as a nice 2 hours. That was amazing. Thank you, everyone who participated.
Indeed, thank you all, and thank you for watching, whoever is watching. And I want to welcome every human being on planet Earth and even extraterrestrial intelligences to join the Block Party, which happens every Friday, starts at 7 a.m. Pacific time and goes for 24 hours. Thanks hugely to Marco, who really keeps it going like nobody else. And then during the Block Party from noon to 2 Pacific time, we have the podcast called The Start Is Near, focused largely but not entirely on
Which
collective.
anyone who here in the past 2 hours had participated in.
Yeah, exactly. We're now wrapping up.
This is the Joe Rogan's Joe Rogan. This is your favorite comedian's comedian or whatever. Yeah, go on, Jamin. Sorry.
This is the Start Is Near podcast, which again happens from 12 to 2 Pacific time every Friday within the Block Party. And then as soon as we end this podcast, which we're about to do, then we cut straight over to what's called the Afterglow. And we often do the podcast from a breakout room, and then afterwards we come back to the main room. But right now we're just doing the podcast from the main room. And in the Afterglow, we just keep it going, keep the conversation going. Part of the reason for the 24-hour Block Party is to give plenty of time and space for these conversations to develop. And it started out 4 years ago as the Collective Intelligence Block Party. We just call it the Block Party nowadays. And with that, I just want to welcome everyone to come and participate in the Block Party. If you're just watching this video and you don't have the link to join the Zoom room, go to radish.org, and the link is right there on the homepage. And with that, I'm going to end the recording. And once again, thank you all, and please stick around for the Afterglow. Thanks, everyone. Blessings.